Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me. And that's not the 3,581 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We are 19 subscribers away from 3,600. Can we get to 4,000 by the end of the year? I don't know. Let's see. But today we are back to the Xbox 360 games. For those of you who complain that I don't show you rare games, I think I have one of the rarest games on the system to show you today. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so let's not bury the lead. I picked one of the hardest to find Xbox 360 games. In fact, this game was only released in South America, I want to say, or Mexico. I don't think it had a US release. It definitely didn't have a European or a PAL release. And during the Fomo period, it was getting up there. Now, luckily, I got this for a fraction of what it had been going for because it had a little bit of issue with the disc, but it still plays. And that game is El Chavo Kart. So, this might on the surface just look like a run-of-the-mill Mario Kart copy, because it is. But it's actually a really fun game. And to be honest with you, I might like this more than current Mario Kart. It reminds me a lot of circa Mario 64 and Double Dash Mario Kart before you could get in there and start customizing the carts for racers, the wheels for racers, the parachute. All that level of minutia I don't care for, as well as I really enjoy it when the kind of car you get comes with the racer you pick. That's the kind of game I want to play. I can't stand it where you can pick a character and then customize them to drive any way you want. Sometimes variance is not a good thing. And what's nice about El Chavo Kart is that when you pick a character, they have a corresponding car that comes with them. And I popped it in. I played through a couple of circuits. It's more or less a Mario Kart clone. So you have a circuit of 5 races, though not every single race just requires you to win the race. There are certain parameters to some of them. So one, for instance, has a survival mode. One has one where you have to target the other enemies. One has a time attack mode where you have to keep picking up items in the level to extend your time. So it adds a little nuance with it, but the levels themselves are very colorful, very bright. The mechanics are extremely tight. The game controls like a dream. Now, when I first started heavily researching 360 games people recommend, I would see this one pop up from time to time. I didn't quite register why it was so rare and expensive, but it was around a $100 game when I first heard about it, and looking at the price tag here, it got up to about $400. Now, that's nowhere close to what I got it for. Talk about 25% of that, even lower. But as far as the game goes, I can see why it's expensive, and it is an absolute travesty this did not come out here, because it really outdoes Mario Kart in a lot of ways. Like I say, I don't really care much for the Wii Mario Kart. I'm not a big fan of Mario Kart 8. Now, some of that has to do with the split screen where it cuts it down the middle instead of horizontally. But I just didn't enjoy playing it that much. And playing El Chavo Kart, I was just having a blast. And so, expensive one, very hard to come by. It's not worth the really high price tag in my opinion, though I got it for around $70. And for that absolute bargain of a deal, I would highly recommend it, especially given the circumstances around it, and just one that I thought came out of left field. There's a reason why so many people talk about it. It is a region-free game, so to my UK viewers, if you want to play this, you can play it on your Xbox 360s as well. Just a really fun game all around. I guess it's based off of a Mexican cartoon. And from what I heard, they re-released it in 2018 or 2017 for, I think, phones or PC or something. And they changed the art style, though, to look more like pop caps or whatever, or not pop caps, the whatever the stupid collectible toys they sell at GameStop are called. But anyways, fun game. That's how we're starting this week. Now, the next game we're going to talk about was recommended to me by you guys. So I had someone in the comments recommend looking at this game, and it was like a $5, $6 game, not expensive, probably because it's a sports game, and that was Ballers: The Chosen One. And if I gotta say, this game reminds me a lot of, say, the Def Jam series, but instead of playing as a fighter, you're playing as a basketball player. Now, it has licensing galore across the board. They make it seem like this is some sort of thing that happens after the NBA season concludes. All the rookies or new rookies go up against the big dogs. It'd be like Dwight Howard or Carmelo Anthony, or names like this from circa, late 2000s, early 2010s. They go up against these up-and-comers and kind of go up against like 21 matches or street ball. And the game more or less plays like a lesser-tiered NBA Jam, in my opinion. It was very rough to start. And you create your own character. So, of course, I made my character as tall as possible, because why not? That always makes basketball players better. But I put all my points in three-point shooting. Could not hit a three-pointer to save my life. The dunking mechanic wasn't all that clear. The stripping the ball wasn't all that clear. But overall, I had a fun time with the game. And to the guy who recommended it, thank you. I really did enjoy playing this. This is a fun little adjacent game when you're tired of NBA Jam. It almost feels like it feels like NBA Jam if it was in the Unity engine or something like that, because it's got that 3D 2.5D look, whereas NBA Jam is very 2D. The announcer also trying to invoke that style. I thought it sounded like The Rock at times. I'm pretty sure it's not The Rock, but with the amount of basketball players and support they had behind this game, maybe. And I know the name of his television show was Ballers, so then again, maybe that is related. That'd be funny, though I thought that was football. But yeah, Ballers: The Chosen One. Pretty fun game, especially if you like those NBA Jam style games and want something that has a little bit more storyline to it. There is a lot of content here and well worth checking out, especially given the price tag, and you can play it with friends too, so win-win on that one. Alright, now, after last week's video, I had one of you guys in the comments reach out to me. So Michael from Lake Oswego, Oregon, thank you so much. He generously donated some games to the channel. I had talked about how I was missing the first disc from Max Payne on the 360, so I was unable to play it, and he just reached out to me and said, hey, I got you, bro. So not only did he send me a new copy of Max Payne 3, but he sent me some absolute gold that I have not had a chance to cover, so we'll talk about that when I get to it. So you haven't heard the last of our friend Michael, but just even for this alone, thank you so much. Thank you. This made my week, man. It's so kind of you. I appreciate you so much. And as far as playing Max Payne 3 goes, now after playing the first two, and then even after looking into it last week when I talked about the PS3 version, I was not quite prepared for the shift in how it feels. So this is when Remedy was gone from Max Payne, and this one was purely made by Rockstar, and it definitely feels more like a Rockstar game. It's got a lot more in common with LA Noire than it does with Max Payne. Because at this point, Remedy went off to make Alan Wake, I believe. But focusing on the game, it definitely has big production value. There's this weird kind of trip effect they have going throughout the game where it'll randomly blur, and I don't know if they're trying to make you feel like Max Payne on drugs or because he's drunk, but it does have a little bit of a fever dream feel. But once you get, and it's highly story based, so much more so. In the first game, you get the little comic book panels, and then you're thrown into the level and you run around. In this one, it's much more streamlined. You're going from point A to point B. They pull you out. They throw in a cutscene. So, style-wise, I can understand why some people would say to not play Max Payne 3. because it is such a departure from the first two. Ultimately, though, playing it, I really did enjoy it still. So even though it's not the same style of game, even though it uses similar mechanics, it has a much bigger feel. So think of it like it's versus like an indie movie versus a AAA blockbuster. Like this is Max Payne by Michael Bay instead of Max Payne by, Roland Emmerich or, guy who did Black Hawk Down, whatever. Anyways. Once you get to the combat, that still has the bullet time slowdown effect, and this is where I can understand people saying and comparing it to a game like Wet, because it does not have the same level of feel that the bullet time had in the first two, even though it's exactly the same. And you can do a dive, and when you do the dive, it automatically puts you into the bullet time. But when you fire your gun and when you hit enemies, it has the same problem that GTA 4 has or some of the Grand Theft Autos have, is that it doesn't really feel like there's any impact behind the bullets hitting their targets. They just fall down. And it's funny because Red Dead Redemption doesn't really have this issue, but part of that might be because it is the Old West and it's got better sound design. But in this game, when you fire off a bullet, people die. There's not an indicator. That was one of the good things that Red Dead Redemption did, is that when someone fell and was gone, I think it showed a little X on them as they dropped. And this one, they just kind of drop. And a cool thing they added is that when you do finish off an enemy, if it's the last enemy in the room, it'll then show you in a close-up, kind of like Stranglehold did, but then it allows you to continue firing. Now, you're wasting ammo by doing this, but it's also very satisfying to just see bullet holes riddle these people going left and right. And as far as the story goes, it transports you out of New York too. So there is that kind of that stark gothic black and white feel gone, because now I think you're in Panama. So the locale changes too. So I can understand why some Max Payne fans might have felt a little off-put. But just playing the first 3 chapters, I was hooked. I was in for the ride. I really enjoyed my time. And I will go back and finish this one so I can finish off the Max Payne trilogy. But well done to Rockstar. It's not easy taking over a franchise when it's not your baby. And I think they did a pretty serviceable job with it. Bullet time feels good. It's just the weight of the gunplay just isn't there. As well as being able to hold multiple weapons. I found that a little disconcerting. And popping the pills didn't seem as I don't know, it wasn't the same, even though it was really, really fun. Okay, now here's one that I found because I just happened to come across I think it was another English YouTuber or British YouTuber, and they were talking about games they haven't been able to find in their local GameStop equivalent, whatever those Game Stars are called. And one of the games he spoke of was a game called Falling Skies the Game. And I'm sure I've seen this over the years. I vaguely remember the television show. I want to say it was one of those TNT shows or TNN or something on one of the cable networks that wasn't FX, so it didn't have the prestige of something like The Shield or Rescue Me. And this was around things like Rizzoli and Isle and Suits and all these other USA shows of I want to say the mid-2010 or mid-2008, somewhere around them. But when I saw the gameplay footage in the YouTuber's video, it looked just like XCOM. And if you guys know anything about me, I am a huge fan of XCOM Enemy Unknown. And so immediately I went straight to Google, I looked up the game, I looked up reviews in the game, and everything said it's basically an XCOM clone. It takes place between seasons 3 and 4 of the television show, but it's an XCOM clone. So if you know how to play XCOM, it's plug and play. If you don't, it leaves a little bit to be desired, and it's not quite as good. But got the permadeath, got the base building, got all of that. But yeah, pure XCOM. So immediately I went out and picked it up. You can still find it brand new even for $10, $15. I got a used copy for I want to say $10. Popped it in, and yes, it is just like playing a XCOM clone that is about 90% of the way there. Not quite all the way there, though I will say the percentages seem to be a lot more generous. If you guys have played XCOM, you'll see a 90% shot and somehow it'll miss 4 times in the same match. Versus this one I was playing and it had a 60% shot and it seemed to hit it every single time. as well as it allows you to use 2 action points, so you can either move twice or you can attack twice. So that is a difference. In XCOM, if you fire, generally, in most cases, that ends your turn. As well as when you're moving on the grids, it does not do as good a job as XCOM does, where it shows you when you're moving into cover or when the space you're going to is moving into cover, as well as they have a lot of stuff on the ground that obfuscates your view, so it makes it hard to see where the grid is. But other than that, it does play and look just like an XCOM game. And as someone who knows nothing about the television show, it really doesn't matter. You just get in there, you shoot aliens, you move on to the next stage. There's aliens that kind of take over humans, and then those guys, like, it's an XCOM game. I can't keep saying that. It literally looks just like it. It feels like you just took a mod of the regular XCOM game and now put in people from the television show. And your characters level up the same way. You have skill trees where you can assign them. You have the heavy bruisers. You have grenades. There's med pack. I'm such a fan of this game just on principle. Is it phenomenal? Not really, but it's a lot more user friendly. So one of the things about XCOM that drives people nuts is that it's always one of those things where you're constantly teetering on the edge of failure. Whereas in this game, that's not the case. There's not much chance for failure if you know what you're doing. And even though it's not as much fun as, say, something like Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, because that one really had a lot more polish, it's still a fun excuse to play in that universe. And I know there's a lot of these, but I just haven't come across that many. And most of these type clones tend to be on the PC. So this runs decently enough on the 360, and something I'd like to take a look at even more so, because the next game we're going to talk about, because once again, I'm just running through my whole collection now, so we're just going to touch base on it briefly, and that is, of course, one of the GOATs, XCOM Enemy Unknown. You knew I had to talk about it at some point. I talked about the DLC version, Enemy Within. Even still, it's worth it to have Enemy Unknown, just because this is likely my 3rd favorite game of all time. I've already talked about it by proxy by speaking about Falling Skies, but if you ever see this, if you're ever wondering about what a perfect game looks like, in my opinion, this is it. It is very difficult. It made me have to restart. So when I originally got it, I played a campaign at my older brother's house, and we got to a point where we got soft locked. Now I managed to get through it at a later date, but the game allows you to progress in a way that is not the right way to do it, as well as you can progress faster on the types of enemies you see beyond what your capabilities are, especially if you fail missions. So I started a second campaign at my house, and through that I was able to destroy everything. And there's modes like Iron Man Match, and what makes the game so significant is that when your troops level up, they build a story. So they have chances to fire, they have chances to kill people, but if they die, then they are gone. And then suddenly you have a big chunk of your team missing. And I've had stories where I've literally lost my entire squad minus one person, or the entire squad in totality. And it just, those moments stick with you. And it's something unlike anything else I've found in any other type of game. And so it's really cool. It's like playing with your little toys. And when the toys are gone, they're gone for good. And it's just the memory of them lives on. And I really, really enjoy XCOM. But yeah, that's a great one. Pick it up if you haven't ever played it. Okay, so I picked up a couple other ones this week too. This was one that I've just seen. I basically, there was those, after Gears of War came out, there was these games that came out that were co-op kind of buddy cop, buddy gunplay experiences, but I never tried them. So Army of Two was one of them. And then the other series that was like that is this one, which is Kanan Lynch Dead Men. And I knew nothing about this. I picked it up. It was like $6 at my local game store. And from what it looks like is that you are a prisoner who gets busted out of jail by your former associates, but it seems like you screwed over your associates, so now they're putting you on a suicide mission, and they have you tagged along with another guy that they busted out of jail. So I think that's Lynch. And then his job is to be the idea guy, and he's not a great shot, so Kane has to kind of show him the ropes. Lynch's default loadout is a shotgun and a magnum, which is funny because that's what I'd prefer to Kane using the machine gun and the pistol. But then there's just a lot of, not mediocre gun play, but just not the most solid in the world. And that's really about it. So it's the two of you. I can see this being a really fun pick up and play co-op experience. But as far as real substance goes, not all there. All the enemies look the same. The standard run and shoot, cover based, this and that. You have a kind of a toggle on your screen that shows you where to go, but then it's not always there. Graphics wise, aren't that great. But it's a super cheap co-op game and fun enough. You know, I've played a lot of shooters now. There's a lot of first person and third. Oh yeah, and that's why. By the way, sorry guys, last week for calling Bureau Declassified a first person shooter when it's a third person, and same with the Damnation. I know. Take away my YouTube credentials. Sometimes I'll confuse first person and third person because they really do feel similar. But yes, anyways, Kanan Lynch, Dead Men, solid game, well worth having in your collection, and one that I'll probably highlight more when I eventually get to that Xbox 360 co-ops game video, whenever I run out of new releases to talk, new pickups to talk about. Alright, we have a few left here, one of which is one that I have covered before, but as I've gone back to a few of these where I didn't actually play them, this was one that did not get good reviews. It is a dirt cheap game. We're talking $3-4 complete. You can still find it for around that. And it was a sequel to a game that came out on the OG Xbox that I really enjoyed, but I never owned that either. And I really just remembered it from a demo disc where you were playing almost like an American Gladiator style ball level. But the game is Fusion Frenzy 2. Now, this more or less is a Mario Party clone with a little bit of nuance on it. There is a card play aspect where you can essentially bet cards on your performance in the minigames before the minigames happen. One will give you 4 times points, one will divide everyone's points, one will give you 6 times, another one will steal someone's card. And then you just leverage that with your performance. Now, you don't get that many cards to use, so it's not something you can use every match. Every one of there's no map, so it's kind of like there's a host who's obnoxious who then announces where you're going, and then you pick a mini game or he picks it for you. And the way the matches are assigned is you win planets. So there's 7 planets total, I believe, and then each planet has corresponding lists of mini games. So depending on which planet you're on, the fire planet will have these associated mini games, the water planet, Neptune, Earth, etc. And then you can kind of choose when it's your turn to pick a match, one that you think you're going to be better at. And then sometimes he'll add added bonus things that are happening in that level, like, oh, the winner gets a card, or maybe the person who comes in last will get a bonus, or things like that. And it doesn't matter if you win 3 out of 4 of the mini games, it's how many points you make. So that's where the cards can really get you. So for instance, I played a match and I ended up losing it to player 2, even though I won almost every single one of the events, but because they were much smarter with how they played their cards, pun intended, they got more points and ended up winning 2 planets instead of the 1 planet that I had. But fun overall. Like, I was genuinely surprised at how much I enjoyed it, and mercifully it does allow you to skip the guy's dialogue, so that's probably the worst part of the game, is there's just a lot of slowdown between the mini games and a lot of fluff. But overall, and the mini games themselves are pretty fun. Like, they're pretty good takes on the Mario Kart formula. A lot of them have much longer timers than you would expect, as well as they do have variances. So what happens in a lot of Mario Party, in a lot of Mario Party levels, is you may get a mini game that's suddenly over in 5 seconds. Well, in this game, you'll have those kind of mini games, but then they'll have rounds. So it'll be the best of 5 rounds instead of just the best of 1 round. So if you're playing the bumper balls level and you really enjoy it, then you get to have multiple rounds of that. So it's actually a pretty good take on it, and overall, I did enjoy it. And funnily enough, even though I said the first time, yeah, it's worth it to get it because it's cheap, it's actually a really fun party game, and one that I can now definitely recommend because it's not that hard and it's a pretty solid game. Okay, now here's one that I know gets a lot of hate, but because I'm working through the Assassin's Creeds, I don't believe I've talked about this one. And I really like this. I'm also a fan of history, a fan of American history, And I found this one was clever enough. It was interesting how they had you start off as one protagonist and then go on to another one. And yes, people don't like Connor, but I think it's a little unfair. I think it's a decent enough game. And that's Assassin's Creed 3. Now, I know there's not large towers that you're going up and climbing up in Rome and Florence and Italy. But to be honest, I liked that because I was getting tired. This is the fifth game in the Assassin's Creed, I think, because there was one and then there was 2 Revolutions, and then this one. So yeah, 5 games, and I think now bear in mind, I also got a gum graft at the time of getting this game, so I had nothing but time to play this, so that might have influenced me too, because I just gotta sit nice and pretty and play it. And I really liked it. I liked the take, how they introduced. I didn't expect seeing things like George Washington. This was the first real time that they really put in things like muskets and shotguns and things. And it also introduced the ship warfare, which, yes, I know Black Flag really perfected it. But still, seeing the ship warfare in 3, you could see the seeds of, wow, this is a really cool mechanic. I hope they do more with it. And they did. And there was even the random things they would do, like they had the Headless Horseman show up in it, which to this day, I still thought there was a glitch because it just turned out to be an Easter egg. It was an Easter egg and a trophy. And it was one of the earliest instances where I realized that, wow, they really just designed this stuff for the stupid trophies or the stupid achievements, not for the actual fun of what it's going to do. Because what happens is you'll do this long mission, I think it's for Paul Revere, and then all of a sudden you'll see in the background a guy laughing on a horse with the Headless Horseman, and then he just disappears, and then that's it. The whole storyline just stops. And I remember I had to look it up and be like, did I miss something? No, I didn't. That's just where it ended. But yeah, fun game, one to definitely pick up. Plays great. One of the more enjoyable Assassin's Creeds in my opinion. Though do bear in mind there are a lot of people who don't like it. And yeah, Connor's a little stiff, but still it was nice having a new protagonist because Ezio got a little tired in my opinion, especially after they made him old Ezio, which I really don't enjoy. I don't like it when they make you play as the old version of the character. All right, last 2. So the last one we're going to be re-looking at again was Dantes Inferno. Now, I know that last time when I talked about it, it was basically like a God of War clone from what I've heard. Yeah, it's a God of War clone, and it is absolutely fantastic. Also, what is it with all of these Knights Templar games that came out in the 360 around 2007 to 2010? You got Assassin's Creed, you got the First Templar, you got the Cursed Crusade, and then Dantes Inferno all take place during the Crusades, and you're playing as some sort of Templar, except for Assassin's Creed. But it's like, what was in the water? How did everyone use the same kind of theme? Because I assumed it was about Dante and the 7 levels of hell, but it's a little different than that. It is a very mature game. Unfortunately, your girlfriend or your wife gets killed at the beginning of it, gets ripped down into the underworld, and then it's up to Dante to go and try and rescue her. And it is very much a God of War clone, which now in 2024, if you enjoy those old God of War games, they really don't make many like them. There's a difference between a God of War game and a Bayonetta game or a Platinum's game. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. The way I like to say it is that in these kind of games, it is expected that you will overwhelm the enemy. In more a Bayonetta or a Platinum's games, it's more expected that you'll be overwhelmed by the enemy unless you execute. Or like Nier Automaton, things like that. So in this one, you just lay waste, and then when you get the enemy into a vulnerable state, you can execute them if they're large ones. It's all very smartly designed too. You can grab them with your scythe and then blow them away with your cross ability, or you can punish them, and it's just a lot of dumb fun. Even the statue just being a naked effigy of your girlfriend, which, yeah, there's a lot of nudity in this game too, and it's made by Visceral Games, the people who made Dead Space, so that should tell you that this game is very quality. And this is the direct game they did after the first Dead Space, so they were kind of at the height of their power. So all in all, a phenomenal game, another one you can find complete for what, $10, $20? Highly recommend picking that one up. And an EA game that's worth it. Can you believe it? They were actually surprisingly solid for single single player experiences circa 2007 to 12. Unfortunately, not so much anymore. And then the last game we're going to talk about this week. So I had heard, I believe it was from Legally Insane Gamer, that the History Channel games were worth picking up, were entertaining on the 360. So I decided to give it a shot, and there were two of these. Now I'm going to talk about one of them here, but I guess these were two of the more common ones. And the first one we're going to talk about here is Great Battles Medieval by the History Channel. To be honest, I did not enjoy this all that much. It is really an RTS game. What's very cool, though, is it has that flavor of an early 2000s History Channel show, where when you watch the show, they will kind of talk about history, and then they'll show a little dramatization of it. So you'll see, you know, the fields of Dover, and then a knight walking through talking to his squire, and then someone fires an arrow at a coming convent, and then you go and, you know, it's like live action role playing. You get to witness it as they speak the history to you. And that's how this game is. So you'll have the matches lead up, and then they'll have a little bit of a dramatization of the different townsfolk going, the different leaders going, explaining the history. And it takes place during I think it's the War of the Roses between England and France. And you can play as either one. So there's two campaigns for them. There's also a tutorial campaign that kind of teaches you how the game plays. Does not control great. It's one of those ones where I hope the other History Channel games are better. I have a feeling they're all going to play this way. But it is an acquired taste, and as someone who does enjoy history, I was not enjoying the gameplay. And it takes a real long time. You'll send your enemy troops into the other enemy troops, and it's like, I felt like I was waiting 20, 30 seconds until one of the sides won. Now, you can flank the enemy, you can use archers, you can fight against weaknesses, so there's strategy to it, but it really is a very slow-moving RTS, but it's based on history, and you might learn something doing it. But there you go, guys. Those are 10 more games to pick up in the Xbox 360. Thank you guys again for another phenomenal week. If we get up to 3,600, that's going to be crazy. A little something different next week, I think, because we are going to be it'll be the last video before Halloween. I think we're going to do nothing but Halloween-themed games. I wanted to originally do it where every game had dead in the title. I couldn't quite find that many, but that's going to be the next video. And there's going to be a lot of commons in that one, guys. But once again, because I'm just rolling through these with snapshot kind of reviews or snapshot thoughts. Luckily, there's a lot of those kind of games I've played that I really don't have a chance to talk about other than this. So that's what we have to look forward to. And then after that, we got another video with some absolute bangers. Like I said, Michael sent me some incredible games. So thank you again, and we'll get to those probably in 2 weeks. But yes, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.